presentation will be separated to two parts. I'll talk about why design system adoption is really hard, and then I will show you something new that we've been working on in Supernova. But before we get to this, let's start with actual celebration of design systems. Now, I think this is important to do from time to time, because as creators, we know that design systems are great. We know that they provide consistency, they allow you to reuse existing work. You ultimately save a lot of resources. Sometimes you even save sanity of you and also the team members that are using the design system. It allows for faster onboarding. It incurs less technical and design depth. And when it all clicks, it actually provides for much happier teams. I think we can objectively say that teams with design systems are much happier than teams without it. So why is it then if you start with the design system, it actually looks like this? It's you, and you are left wondering why no one is adopting your design system. Why is it not getting enough traction? And I think it has been talked we have talked about this on this conference quite a lot, that design systems are actually products. And if you really look deep into it, if they are the products, they also follow the same rules. And so I would like to introduce you to a concept which you are against, and it is called the chasm. Now, what you see here on the screen is something that is called the innovation distribution curve, or just Moore adoption curve or a law. And what this represents is the behavior and the types of users that you are faced with if you are creating a new product. And it can be a startup, it can be new hardware, but it will also be your design system. And if you don't know what this is, I will just briefly explain what it actually means. So on the left side, it's you. It's the innovators of the world, the ones who say, we actually need a design system, so I will start building it. And you will get few early adopters. Those are the people that see the promise and buy into the promise. And they maybe don't, they don't have a problem with your design system not being complete, having bugs and so on. So those are your early adopters, and they will cope with quite a lot. And you know how it is with design systems. When they start, they certainly are not complete. We don't have resources for it. And then when you go more to the left, you are presented with chasm. And chasm is something that you have to overcome in order to get to early and late majority, basically the adoption throughout the entire company. Now, the early majority and the early adopters have one vast difference. While the early adopters like your design system as it is, and they will give you feedback, and they will appreciate every change that you have done, early majority doesn't care about this. The only thing they care about is the value that you provide them. And if there is not enough value or not enough perceived value, you actually cannot cross this chasm. And if you, again, tie it to real products, this phase, this crossing the chasm, is actually what kills most of the products. Most of the startups fail because they fail to deliver the value to their users. So you are faced with this problem, and this is what prevents the adoption inside the companies. And it has been well researched. You can actually find a lot of very interesting information on this topic. Now, why is it that people are scared of crossing this chasm? Why is it that people are actually scared of trying to use your design system? And in Supernova, over the years, we have been talking with hundreds, thousands of people to discover what are like the major areas inside design system that are actually like real problems, real blockers, that if you have even one of them, the design system will just not scale, or it scales only if you have like a buy-in from the highest in the company, which can actually force the decisions. So let's explore all of those areas and talk about them a little bit more. As a first point, sometimes the design systems are built in vacuum. If we ignore the existing work that was already done by the users, it will present a gigantic obstacle in adoption, because we'll be ultimately creating something very new, something that will feel not very familiar, and that will probably also not use the workflows and tools that the people are actually using. So I want to show you an image that actually illustrates this very well. Now, this tree is your design system without the ecosystem. it can live on its own. And as you see, it does sort of, but it doesn't look exactly great, right? And this is because it doesn't have the support from the entire ecosystem, be it the tools, be it your teammates, and so on. And so what you as a design system owner, creator, design ops are trying to do is to turn this tree into an ecosystem, and ultimately to turn it into the lush forest. And this is what I mean by not having an ecosystem, not being connected to what your users are already experiencing or expecting. It will give you a system which exists on its own, but actually is not perceived as something that people can use in their day-to-day work. Now, second point, which I think prevents adoption, especially as you really try to scale the design system, is outdated, incomplete, or invisible information. Now, think about design systems as a relationship, really. It takes ages to build the trust, but in a few moments, you can lose all of this trust, right, that you have built. And with design systems, it is really the same, because they are about the people. You can be building their trust over time, but if they find components that are broken, if there are tokens that they cannot use, because they've been deprecated, but they don't know about this, then it will just leave a bad taste. It will leave a bad impression. And finally, I think it is worth noting that people, and it is something that we don't talk about nearly often, people are putting a lot of trust into your hands by using your design system. Let's imagine like Joe, which is using your design system for their work, and they build a feature and it's based on your design system components. And they ship this feature, and then their manager will come and they will say, well, clearly this feature is breaking in production. Why is it? And they don't know because the system has a flaw, right? But it will not be you as design system creators who will get the flag. It will be the person who actually implemented it, because he made the choice to use the design system. And so he's directly responsible for delivering that feature. It is, of course, a little bit ad absurdum, but you can see how this can have long-lasting effects if we just deliver something that has a direct ramifications to how people are operating and implementing their systems and their products. As a third point that I want to talk about is not enough resources for sophisticated tooling. If you are starting a design system, and this is especially true when you are starting a design system, you only have really two choices. You either can take existing design systems that are already examples of this, like Carbon or maybe some other ones, Material UI, and you can customize it. But as we know, the customization is actually really complicated. And what the design system doesn't give you is actually the tooling that was used to build that design system. This is very problematic, because like Material UI wasn't built just in some, raw markdown. There are tools built around it that can deliver the data, that can import the data, and so on. And so all in all, it just makes the system not flexible. So you can opt to build your own tooling solution. However, at the beginning, when you are missing the buy-in from the companies, this is very costly and in many cases just plain impossible. So you will get to a third choice, which is that you will manage your design system without any tooling at all, basically manually. And I believe a lot of you is actually doing this. Now, there is catch-22. In order to actually get the resources to build something more appropriate, you need the resources to show the design system. And so you really cannot overcome this unless, maybe you opt for some open source and you really have a lot of time to stitch it all together. And lastly, there is no future proofing. So usually you build your design system for what it is now. But if your company maybe pivots to different technology, and it happens all the time, then you will again have to adopt maybe a different solution, or maybe you will have to spend a lot of time. So we just don't have enough resources for something sophisticated unless you are a very large company. But that is, of course, not the majority. Now, I would like to read you something. Experiments by Princeton psychologists reveal that all it takes is 1/10 of a second to form an impression of a stranger from their face. Now, this was published as a very famous science study in July issue of Psychological Science. And it is very true. Like, already you have formed an opinion of me. And I do hope that this opinion is more positive than negative, but you did. And you do this subconsciously. Right? It's not something that we can really enforce on us. It's just something that happens. And it's the same with products. It's the same with design systems. Some people say that it takes 7 seconds. Some people say it takes 15, but even whatever it is, you really have a very short window to convince that what you are presenting to users has a direct value that can impact them in a positive fashion. And so with that, I bring the fourth point, which is that sometimes design systems don't provide enough perceived value. Maybe there is a value in your design system, and I believe there is always, because we do it with a positive intention, right? But the value is sometimes not conveyed properly. If you bury this information, people will not know that this is actually an amazing design system. And if your delivery of that design system is cumbersome, the value is diminished further. And as we said, the chasm is all about, providing that value. Basically, if you tie it to a product, reaching that product market fit. And one last point that is very often neglected is that we are not building the design system just for the teams that are using it. You need to get the resources from your management. I believe a lot of you do struggle with getting the resources from the management. And in my opinion, this is because we sometimes neglect to actually explain the business value of the design system. Like managers like numbers, right? They like to see that they will be 20% more efficient because it directly converts to revenue. It directly converts to resources that you have available. So if you just say, if you have any way how to show that the design system has a value that is more quantitative, then this will help you quite a lot. And of course, if we look at the giants of design systems, they have some amazing feature that we would love to have that really turn the design system into 11, but we just don't have resources for this. So, the value is diminished by that. We have to do what we have to do. But if we had more resources, we could make design systems that are more amazing, even though they have the same content. One last thing that I want to talk about, something that we feel, but we probably cannot really grasp what it is. So, and I couldn't as well, but I think it's important to note, and this is that sometimes design systems are missing, the soul, the oomph, if you will. And now if we compare those two images, on the right side, you have Sprout Social Seeds design system, which has been handcrafted. It is beautiful. And in this demo, you will see a bit more about this. But if you look at the right side, we have a documentation that was written, actually, I think, using Storybook. Now, not to say that both of them don't have the value, but if we talk about the initial way how you perceive this design system, you will definitely say that the one on the left side is actually better, and that it was more involved, and clearly there has been more work put into it. Even if you are a designer, even if you are a developer, but it's not about the value, it's about how you perceive it and how you like it right from the beginning. But if we talk about the adoption, and that we have all this like plethora of struggle that is there, we can still say that it clearly must be possible to deliver a design system that actually overcome all of those issues, right? It gives you the value that you need. It looks nice. It works. And we have some nice examples here, like Salesforce Lightning, Fluent, Carbon, or the Sprout Social Seeds design systems. But you can say that those are gigantic ones, right? They have the resources to commit to it. But there are hundreds of others that are from much smaller companies that still work. And so I've been researching this quite a lot, and I tried to understand what makes a good design system a good design system. What makes a design system to be easily adopted in the company? And in my opinion, this is what all the design systems have in common. Now, or all the best design systems that are being adopted have in common. Is number one, they do very clearly present and deliver value to the users. And if you first see them, you are just like, wow, this is something I want to use, or at minimum, I want to give it a shot. They blend information from multiple departments. Design systems are about people, but ultimately they are about teams. You know, we talk about this, that they are about people, but really it's about all the people. So it's designers, it's developers, it's stakeholders, just everyone. And the design system should meet and welcome all the users really equally. Now, they also neatly integrate with company toolchains, because if you create something unnatural, then you will not be able to integrate with what the company is using, and you will be left as that tree that we've been showing, without any ecosystem. An ecosystem helps you to grow. So you need those people who like to use it, to which it doesn't prevent, the normal job that they are doing. And finally, they add additional value. The design systems should not be just about components, just about tokens. There is value in this, and it's immense. We have talked about this at the beginning, but I think there should be additional value. I think we could potentially build a tooling that allows you to, extend the design system beyond what is originally intended, and really help in the companies, in the workflows that already exist, to just empower and, or maybe even superpower those existing workflows. One last thing, they are up to date. Always, if you go to like Material UI, you will see that they have hundreds of versions. You can go down in history. If you use a specific version, it always reflects the latest information, which is really hard to do. Now, you will say, Yiri, this is awesome that you say this, and probably in most cases you are right. But how do I do this if I simply don't have resources buying, or if I'm struggling to get the adoption? And to that, I say, let's stop talking and let's do an actual building of a design system, because I think what better way to end the conference, even though there are still few talks, than just to build a design system, including all the tooling that you need to actually get value from it. So I would like to introduce you to a concept that we in Supernova call design system as a service. And actually, I don't really have to explain this. I will go straight to the demo and show you what it is all about. So here, what is my goal in this demo? My goal in this demo is to create a design system, or maybe create the ecosystem for the design system from multiple sources. My developers have created the libraries that I will be using in React and so on. And in Figma, we maybe have some additional information. There are also repositories which have some other extra stuff. We want to be getting data out of this. And we really only have 20 minutes because I would very much like to do QA at the end. So we better get started because this usually takes a few months. Now, I have a design system here that was created in Figma. It has some very nice color palette. It has some typography, and we also have some icons. Now, what I will do is I will just take this link to a Figma file and switch to Supernova. Currently, I just created a new design system, and it is very empty. You can see that there is nothing. So what I'll do, I'll link a Figma file, which what it will do, it will give me all the information that is available in that Figma file. Now, this processes a lot of data, so it takes a little bit of time, but what we will get is the entire component, asset, and token library once the import has finished. Now you can see that we have imported something 40 components and also 170 styles, basically all of our libraries. Now here I have the first part of what makes Supernova Supernova, and that is basically design system management. In this, you can pull the data from design or code sources and basically keep them at one place. But it's not just that we can keep the data, we can also modify them. And to show you this, you can see that we have imported some colors and typography. But design systems are not about this. In fact, they can have fonts, gradients, shadows, borders, radii, measures, or even localization libraries if you want to do this, or even something crazy like animation tokens, for example. And so I want to fuse the information from designers and developers and create maybe some other definitions that were not previously defined in Figma. And what better way to do this than just create a border token, because border token cannot be defined by regular means in Figma, or even if we go to measures, it's very complicated to do without maybe plugins that do this. So I'll create a new token, which will be my developer-only token. It's not a really great name for a token, but we'll have to do. And I have the choice to either use a raw color here, or I can actually reference some other tokens that I have in my design system. So Supernova allows you to pull the data, but then also use them and intermix them, create mixins or create aliases to tokens. And this doesn't apply to just tokens. You will see this in many other cases, especially in documentation when we get to it. But I will create this border token, and maybe I want to use this nice blue. So now you can see we have created a new border token, which is developer only token, 1 pixel width, and it has the blue reference. If the blue reference would change in Figma, we would actually automatically pick that up, and this token would change appropriately as well, and it would be distributed throughout the entire system. So for example, if we are using it in documentation, in the documentation, it would be immediately updated as well. Now, I talk about documentation, and there are some other things that I would like to show you, but I think it's better if we just go to docs and start building the design system and something that users will see. So let's edit the documentation. Now I have a few pages that I would like to finish with you. The first page is just an introduction about what Supernova is and some core values that we have. Now I have core colors here, but clearly I don't have any colors defined here. So how do I get them here? Now the base premise about Supernova is that you can pull the data and you can also reuse them in any form or shape that you want to in the documentation, in the export pipeline, which I will show you at the end, and many other places. So now I would like to add some core colors. So I will just simply write token, and the editor of Supernova works similarly, maybe what you are used in Notion. You actually don't have to really lift a finger from your keyboard. You can just write it using the commands or some other menus. Now, in order to show the core colors, I'll maybe use token list, which allows me to selectively add tokens from my library. So I'll maybe use this radioactive green one, and then maybe this purple one, and also the blue 800. Now, I've added this list of colors, and I will publish my documentation. What is important to note about Supernova is that the front end of the documentation is not the same as the editor. The editor experience is always the same, but the front end can be vastly different, and we will get to this once we go to components. Now, if I view our documentation, you will see that we now have some core colors. And what is really nice about this is that if we change something in Figma, this green 900, for example, would be automatically changed the second I publish this documentation again. We will not be updating it, of course, for the users when you are doing some changes, but we will propagate this to the documentation. All right. So now I hope that you can hear me, because the Zoom just had some problem.
It's all good on our side.
But we will continue. So now about the style guide. I want to show a full style guide that we have inside Supernova. And to do this, I will again add a token, but this time I will add the token group. And what this allows me to do is to track an entity that basically tracks all the tokens that belong to a certain group. So if we add another token to that group in Figma, for example, if we extend this green palette with another token, for example, green 1200, then it will immediately show up here. And again, we publish the documentation and it just grows. We don't have to spend time basically maintaining this documentation by hand. And of course, I can add unlimited number of those palettes. So, and not just the colors. I could potentially add the borders, the typographies, and so on. But I want my color palette here, so I will just add the colors for now. Great. Now we have colors. I will export this later. We'll look into how it looks like. But switch to icon library. We want our users to be able to download all the assets, right, from our Figma. And ideally, we want this list to also grow and be exportable in any form or shape that they want to, which we also allow you to do. So what I will do, I will just request a certain content from Figma. I will select the file that I have linked previously and maybe say, well, render me all the icons. And now you can see that I've added 40 icons. Maybe I will make it a little bit smaller. And now we have all the icons inside my documentation. And when I export this, you will be able to download all of those icons in multiple formats. In fact, you can even automate this, but we will get to this at the end of the presentation. So we have published this work in progress design system. We have core colors, we have the style guide, and the style guide already provides some interesting information. We also have icon library, and if I want to, I can download those images. So far so good, but probably you say, well, design system is not about styles, it's not about icons. We have seen that, right? It's mostly about components. And I completely agree with you. So let's add a component. Now, I have this button here that I want to create. And I've started to make this documentation, but I'm actually really lazy. So the only thing I was able to write is this button description. Now, I have this seeds design system here. And what I would like to achieve is to get the entire description that they have here in my design system as well. I cannot really rely just on designers or design ops to provide this content. So instead, I'll have to do it on my own. Now, let's go one element by one. They have this very nice custom component. It says custom component, so probably I will not be able to do that. So let's just skip it for now. But we have this button rendering. And if we want to render the button, we have something really special, especially for our web users. If I, for example, want to render a React code, you can add this very special block that in the backend has also a React compiler. And this React compiler immediately compiled the React code that we have here. No, this is not embedded or something. It just basically works, but it took a long time to do that. But of course, we don't want to have like click me button here, even though it's a live code. So I can actually change it, and you will see that it will refresh in real time. I want to use something from my real code base. So I wrote this definition of a seed button, which, if you can actually see, uses a reference and it links a design system library from Sprout Social. Because obviously I showed you the same demo, the same buttons. So I would like to show you the very same buttons here as well. So I will just copy paste this definition and maybe also resize this window a little bit. It compiles in the backend. And now you can see that we have working buttons. But there is still quite a lot more work that we have to do. Now, if you look at this, there is a lot of properties, just a ton of stuff that we need to add into this documentation. I really don't have time on this demo to write it all, so I put it into Markdown, and Markdown is usually what people use to document their documentation. I'll take this raw link to a Markdown, and I am already logged with the GitHub here, and I will just type Markdown. And if I put this link here, you will see it's probably time that we actually show how the component looks like when we render this. So what will happen, we will connect to a remote source, we will download all the data, we will prepare the compiled code. And now if you go to the documentation, you will see that the components indeed have one button. You can see that it prepares live component and the live component works. And I didn't have to set up anything. You can just copy paste the code and it works exactly as it should. You have complete control over this as well. And finally, it accepted the Markdown and made it an integral part of your documentation. Because one thing that you will often notice is even if people like or do something like this, the parts that it pulls actually don't work together really well, right? But if you would see this documentation site, you would never be able to tell that this wasn't written inside the documentation editor. But in fact, it's coming from your repository. So we have been able to stitch all this information together, and it just looks as it should, but we are using multiple departments. Now, it would probably be all, and thank you. Yes, changes to Markdown will be fetched. In fact, if you want to, we can probably test that. So let's just edit this file. I actually have a right access to this repository. So welcome into Design Systems. And I'll republish the changes. I'll just commit it now. And the GitHub caches the information a little bit. So let's just wait. And then when we export this next time, it will be updated. And I will show you in a few moments. But now I said that we cannot do the custom component here, right? The health indicator. And I just love that health indicator. It is so good. The seeds design system is probably my love relationship at the moment. They've really done a stellar job with this. And I would really like to have that health indicator. And note that it's not only health indicator, it also allows you to do this overlay. So you will find a lot of widgets, I would say, or really extensions of design systems like this, especially in custom design systems. And if you want them, then if you are using, a tool like Supernova, you would never be able to do that, right? Because you are limited by the functionality that the tool provides you. But we felt this is completely wrong, because true design systems and the best design systems, they always have something custom. They have this nice last touch that you have to make yourself. Or maybe you want to use it from, a design system that already exists. So for this, I want to introduce you a very special concept that we've been working on for a long time. And this is something that we call exporters. Now, exporters are packages that power the front end and also can contribute functionality to the editor of Supernova. It's probably better if you actually see it, because you will believe that something like this can work. So I have two exporters. I have the default documentation, and this is what you get when you start with Supernova. But I also have exporter that defines Seed's design system. And the exporters are not just visual packages. They can change everything, literally down to the last character about the documentation that you are exporting. So you can think about it as a team, but not really, because it allows us to provide additional functionality to the editor as well. So before this demo, I actually wrote an additional functionality, and it is the functionality that defines this health button. So now if I go to the available widgets that I have in this editor, and I will write health, you will actually see that the Seeds editor, the Seeds design system package, actually extended the pool of available widgets that I have available in this editor. Note, right now, all the exporter packages are actually open source. So, and they will always be. So you can just go and you can write your own package and you can extend it with any other functionality. And what we want to do with this is to allow large companies like Carbon, or like IBM, to actually provide their own tools, their own plugins. We will go to, right after this conference, we will go to people who created the seeds and ask them whether we can publish this exporter for them, because the health status is, for example, really amazing, right? But does it actually work? And to that, I say, yes, it definitely does. So I will add the dynamic health component. And as you can see, the only thing that it asks me is component ID. Now, somewhere in that exporter package, we have defined that, that this is the interface that we want to use in the editor. And we've also defined how this component should be rendered when it's used with the data inside the documentation editor. So now I will publish this and explain you where it actually takes the data from. I made it so it takes the data from this Excel spreadsheet, and you can have any kind of data. I know that a lot of people are actually using spreadsheets to maintain this. So I've done it in a similar fashion. And you can see that I set the button component to be withering. So now if we export the documentation and actually look at what happened, we will observe two things. The first one, for the observant ones, is that the documentation looked like this, but now it actually looks like a Sprouts design system, because we've visually changed the entire rendering system of the documentation. And if you don't like this, you can go to that package and modify it further. So maybe you will customize it with different colors and so on. But you have this power tool that you don't have to start the tooling right from the very beginning. You can just start from a point where they already are. And we hope that the creators of those open source design systems will actually create those exporter packages for those design systems as well. Because one of the issues that I talked about is that if you want to really use something that already exists, you need the appropriate tooling. But now they can share the tooling as well. And you can literally just go to our store, which is for free. All the packages that are free, you can download a new exporter and your documentation will render and have different functionality as well. Now, this is the Sprout social design system, but let's look at our own design system that was now rendered under the design system under the new design system rules. So here we have some colors, and now you can see that they are rendered differently. I've even added this extra functionality that I really like about the Sprouts design system, that it shows you the overlay. And if you want to show something else, well, feel free. It's just JavaScript and a bunch of templates that you can freely modify however you want. You can also see that the style guide now renders differently. In fact, it provides you with a lot of extra functionality, like being able to copy paste the code. But previously it didn't look like this, right? It just looked like our default documentation, and it only provided you the hex color, certainly didn't have the overlay. And if we go to components, which is what we actually wanted to see, you can see that while in the editor it just shows the dynamic health and button, here it actually renders appropriate component, which is also defined by you as a creator. So you have both control over the editor and also control over the output, and then also control over the entire engine as it is. Now, if I click on this, you will see that the same card actually pops up that is in the Seeds design system. And if I would go to this component health matrix and maybe write that the button is healthy, and I would republish this again, at any point of the publish, we are asking all your systems, all your connected systems to provide the latest information. So here we go to the components, and now you will see that our component is healthy and it's great. And we also have the welcome design systems message that you have asked to be contributed into this. So this is the flexibility of the design system that, and of the platform that we have created. You basically have complete control over everything that is in there. But I still have one more thing that I want to show you. And then I do hope that we'll have questions for, or a little bit of time for questions that I can see that there is quite a lot of them. So I talked about exporters, and you now understand that they are packages that work for the documentation, but they are not just for documentation. In fact, the exporters can be repurposed to pretty much everything. You can think about them as transformation pipelines. You have seen some other tools that try to do this, but we actually bring you a marketplace, the store where people can contribute, because all of those exporters are actually open source. So we hope that the communities around Android, around CSS, there are already communities that are starting to happen around all of these platforms, will contribute to those exporters and extend this platform further. So then at the end, you can imagine that you will just come, you'll import your data from Figma, you will import your data from the React code base. We are also working on solution for mobile, so this will also be possible. And you can pull the data from any arbitrary source, and then you can export it to any source as well. And while I was talking to you, I actually sneaked in a configuration because we also provide you with the entire engine that automates the delivery. So we have something that we call hooks, and hooks are connected to your code bases. You can have unlimited number of hooks. And in my opinion, in my example, I've configured 2 hooks to deliver to Android and to web code base at the same time using different exporters. And so I have 2 repositories here into design system demo Android repository. And you can see that while we've been talking, because I've imported new files, I obtained a pull request that defines Android definitions. And I also obtained another pull request that is available for the CSS this time. So you can basically automate ingestion of the data and also the output of the data. You can customize pretty much all the aspects of this platform. And the nice thing is that while we have been working on this for nearly 5 years, we have actually released it today. So if you want to try it, and especially if you want to start building, the power tools that the design system community already or finally can have, then I would very much like to invite you to our platform. Now we have 7-10 minutes probably for the QA, so I would like to answer as many of them as possible.
Wow, Jerry, this is awesome. I can tell you, everybody's reacting in the chat like, what's going on? This is so cool. Very good demo. Thank you very much. I personally have to say that it feels like you're solving a lot of problems that I used to have. And now hopefully they are sorted.
Thank
really
you.
Cool. So yeah, Nina mentioned in the chat, shut up and take my money.
I love that GIF, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I can picture that meme right away. Yeah, it looks amazing for sure. We do have, yeah, go ahead.
One thing to add to this, of course, it's a product, right? But the reason why we have started Supernova in the first place is because right now there are so many nice tools that are compartmentalized, right? And the tools that people have internally are also amazing. I've seen awesome tools that people don't really know about, but it is extremely hard to actually make them available to a general user. And if I'm starting with a design system, like how can I access to something like this? I cannot even set up the tool even if I had access. So speeding up this part, I think ultimately will lead to a great adoption of design systems, because even though we say that like the design systems are about people, they are also about everything else, right? About the ecosystem and everything that we talked about. So
yeah. Indeed. We do have here on the Q&A from Zoom, Bill was asking, how does this work with extended design systems with libraries dedicated to a core and outward to multiple libraries, meaning libraries for different products and different platforms?
Yeah, well, I can actually show you. So this is just a super quick because we don't have much time, but I don't have to link one design system file. I actually can link unlimited number of design system file files into a one design system. And if they are using the information from one or the other in Figma, we can actually resolve this and create this coherent view on top of the design system. Now, you can also create multiple design systems, and maybe one is using your core brand and one is using a different sub-brand, and you can have two of them at the same time. That also works. What we are also working on is the theming engine, because our token system is awesome. So once this is out, it will actually provide like a native to Supernova solution to the multi-brand as well.
Very cool. Nice. And there are some questions that Andrew was answering as well in the chat. So he's keeping up with the Q&A, no problem. But I think it would be nice to hear from you in regards to the integration with Storybook. So yeah, how is it?
There is just another widget that integrates with Storybook. So you basically take the canvas and you can put it into the editor, and we will try our best to basically integrate it and make it an integral part of of your design system documentation. So we know that a lot of people is using Storybook. In fact, we would discourage you from stopping to use the Storybook, right? We want you to bring the platform, because I think this is the ultimate solution to design systems. Just have a platform that accepts whatever you are already doing. Don't force something new. And if we can achieve that, I'm not saying that we have answer to everything, but we actually give you the means to build that answer yourself. And we hope that you will then contribute it to the community as well.
Very cool. And how does Supernova handle versioning for Figma libraries? For example, future libraries, deprecated components, etc.
Well, so like our versioning model, there is inbuilt versioning into Supernova, actually directly mirrors what Figma does. In fact, if you import and you forget to publish your components, we will tell you there are no components, because we only pull the published stuff, right? So we are not polluting your ultimate source of truth or the documentation with stuff that you maybe have work in progress. So we've actually taken a great care that we understand what is the workflow of people and what they want and don't want to be inside the design system documentation.
Very nice. And it's great that you guys are inserting some versioning of your own, because now that you are integrating everything together and that becomes the source of truth for the whole team to refer to, you can always refer to that version, right? Because
correct. And our versioning works as a snapshot. So it takes a snapshot of everything, including all the sources. So, at one point you import a markdown and we'll save all of this. And then you can continue ingesting more markdown, but the old one will be still the same.
That's really cool. And you gave a quick example there of exporting those definitions. So these definitions from the export, they are brought up from Figma, right? That's where it was first set up.
Yes, but as you have seen, I've also created a token that is non-native to Figma, the border token, or measures or localization libraries. You can do this. So the output is blend of all of that information. But if you want to make something that is custom, you can just go to that exporter and say, maybe export only design tokens, because you will know from which source it came, right? So with just a bunch of JavaScript, you can tweak the behaviors of this platform, even on that export pipeline.
Very nice. So there are some questions about the interactive previews of the component, but actually we've seen it that you can interact with all of them. It's perfect. But I'm also on the same topic around code. So is it possible to import /update tokens from code?
Yes, we will be releasing an API, because the entire Supernova works on API, right? We've made it similarly how Figma works, for example. This API is available to us as a creators right now, but we will be making it available probably later down this year. So because to explain why we have started thinking about API, of course, people are using tools like Style Dictionary, for example, right? And maybe it is your source of truth. In fact, I would say it would be the prominent source of truth right now, because Figma is very limited in what you can do with the design system tokens. In our case, you can actually customize the data model of all the tokens, even coming from Figma. So you can add additional information. For example, like, is the token production ready? Does it have, React name or so? And so we want this API because we know that there are tool chains already out there, and we want to embed into those tool chains seamlessly. I think like the word seamless is so embedded in my mind recently that everything that drives the company is just focused about that. And API is the next logical thing. I do think that what makes Figma great is actually the API, because it allows for a lot of new use cases that were previously not possible. And so we want to follow the same approach, really.
Very nice. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. There is a lot more questions.
I will be there all over it.
Perfect.
Because I have recently moved to California. So for me, it's like 8 a.m. and I can spend the entire day.
Nice. We are at the end of the day here. So
I know.
Nice. Well, it was really nice to have you, Jerry. Really enjoyed
No, thank you very much
everything.
for inviting me. It was awesome. And I do want to thank you for everyone here. I know that you must hear this a lot, but I think it's important to say this is a great conference. A lot of very, very interesting topic. Certainly, even for me, as someone who just lives and dies by design system, I've learned a lot of new stuff, and already there are some new ideas for me that are spawning. So yeah, just a huge shout out to you, not to me. This was a great conference.